Good afternoon. Jason, thank you so much for that very kind introduction and for inviting me today to participate in this dialogue with my friend Rodrigo Jano. It's a pleasure to be here today. I want to take this opportunity to thank you, Rodrigo, for the wonderful visit to my office on Monday and the great conversation that we had. And not only that, the great work that both of our teams are doing together. I think that's very important. Today I have the privilege and the honor of speaking with you as the Acting Assistant Attorney General for the United States Department of Justice Criminal Division. Today, the topic, of course, is lessons from Brazil, corruption, crisis, global cooperation. But first, before I get into some of that, I'd like to tell you a little bit about the Criminal Division, which I mentioned to you just moments ago I have the privilege and honor of leading. Doing so, I think, will provide you with a better understanding of how and why we work so closely together with our foreign counterparts like Brazil. The Criminal Division is made up of roughly 700 attorneys spread across 17 sections and offices, mostly in Washington, D.C., but some stationed in offices around the country, and many stationed in offices around the world and overseas, including Brazil. Among other things, the Criminal Division's investigations and prosecutions often focus on complex white-collar crime cases, including, for example, bribery, public corruption, kleptocracy, organized crime, trade secret theft, money laundering, securities fraud, government fraud, healthcare fraud, and computer and internet fraud. Also housed within the Criminal Division of the Department of Justice is the Office of International Affairs, which is the United States' central authority through which all foreign legal assistance is centralized by treaty and designation. As everybody knows, economies now are global. They continue to become increasingly global and more global every day. So in that sense as well, do the criminal enterprises. They are global, and they don't respect borders at all. We need to find a way to be able to work together, respecting each other's sovereignties, but knowing that we need to become more efficient. This is a significant focus in the Criminal Division's white-collar criminal enforcement efforts, and in particular, its Foreign Corrupt Practices Act and its kleptocracy efforts. Whether uncovering a multinational bribery scheme or seeking to recover illegally derived assets associated with investment funds owned by a foreign government, or protecting the security of our financial system, our biggest investigations are increasingly transnational, often involving multiple foreign jurisdictions. As transnational crime continues to grow, and it's growing, the scope and complexity of those cases are growing as well. We increasingly find ourselves looking across the globe to collect evidence and identify witnesses necessary to build our cases, requiring greater and closer collaboration with our foreign counterparts. As a result, we find ourselves relying more and more on the use of various mechanisms of international cooperation with our foreign counterparts that permit for evidence exchange, fugitive apprehension, and asset recovery. In that vein, it is hard to imagine a better cooperative relationship in recent history than the one that we have between the United States Department of Justice and Brazil. We have cooperated and substantially assisted in one another in a number of public matters that have now been resolved, and are continuing to do so on a number of other ongoing investigations. Anti-corruption prosecutors everywhere are driven by similar principles. Bribery of public officials is wrong. It has a devastating effect on all of our national securities, on civilized societies, on intentional violations of anti-corruption laws must be treated as serious crimes. And those who violate that law must be punished, and their illegally obtained assets must be taken from them. As we have seen across the globe, time and time and time again, corruption inhibits fair and free competition to the detriment of innocent citizens and honest businesses that do not pay bribes. The U.S. Department of Justice remains committed to enforcing the FCPA and to prosecuting fraud and corruption more generally. To succeed in this commitment, we will always seek, when appropriate, to further our investigations through cooperation with countries like Brazil, a country that shares our commitment to rooting out corruption at all levels. The cooperation between the Department of Justice and Brazil has led to extraordinary results. In just the last year alone, for example, the Criminal Division's Fraud Section and the Brazilian Lava Jato Task Force have cooperated and coordinated resolutions in 4 FCPA cases: Embraer, Rolls-Royce, Braskem, and Odebrecht. Odebrecht, in particular, noteworthy due to its breadth and scope. Odebrecht, one of the world's largest construction companies, paid an unparalleled amount of bribes to high-level officials in a dozen countries to secure billion dollars worth of projects around the globe. Commensurate with the conduct, Brazil and the United States, together with Switzerland, were able to achieve the largest ever global fine ever imposed in a corruption case. The company pleaded guilty in the United States and is required to cooperate with the respective countries' ongoing investigation of individuals, as well as to retain the independent compliance monitor for a period of 3 years. In Brazil, it's important to note, approximately 80 people have been charged in connection with this case. It's important to mention how those penalties were levied in these coordinated resolutions. By working together with Brazil and the department, not only assisted one another in gathering evidence and building the case, but made sure to credit the fines and penalties paid to each country, rather than imposing duplicative fines and penalties on the companies. This ensures fairness to the companies and provides the right incentive for companies to cooperate fully with the relevant jurisdictions impacted by this case. In our prosecution of Rolls-Royce, the UK-based company paid about $170 million in U.S. penalties as part of an $80 million global resolution to the investigations in 3 countries: the United States, the UK, and Brazil. As with Odebrecht, the Rolls-Royce resolution involved multiple countries, reflected the misconduct, which involved payments of over $35 million in bribes to officials in half a dozen countries. At the core of the tremendous cooperation between our 2 countries is the strong relationship built on trust. This trust, or some of us call it confianza, allows prosecutors and agents to have direct communications regarding pieces of evidence. Given the close relationship between the Department of Justice and the Brazilian prosecutors, we don't need to rely solely on formal processes such as mutual legal assistance treaties, which often take significant time and resources to draft, translate, formally transmit, and respond to. At the beginning of an investigation, a prosecutor or an agent from a country's financial intelligence unit can call his or her foreign counterpart and ask for financial information that, for example, may identify bank accounts. Once the investigation has progressed to the point where prosecutors are ready to proceed to trial, the evidence may be requested through the mutual legal assistance channel so that it can be admitted into evidence during a trial. This prosecutor-to-prosecutor or law enforcement-to-law enforcement cooperation has allowed both countries to more effectively pursue their cases. Let's face it, as I mentioned earlier, the criminals we seek to identify and bring to justice move quickly, and it's imperative that we do the same. Our respective enforcement agencies continue to cooperate fully with one another and help achieve astonishing results. Brazilian prosecutors and law enforcement have been at the forefront of the anti-corruption fight in the past few years and have exemplified what a prosecutor and law enforcement agent should be. Indeed, this past week, the prosecutors in Brazil won a guilty verdict against former President Lula da Silva, who was charged with receiving bribes from the engineering firm OAS in return for helping in winning contracts with the state oil company Petrobras. It's a case that this part put Brazil at the forefront of countries that are working to fight corruption, both at home and abroad. While the United States and Brazil are working together to investigate and bring criminal cases, particularly those involving corruption, the United States also stands ready to assist with the seizure of illegally obtained assets, even where a criminal case may not be brought in the United States. This is an important fighting tool against corruption, as well as all other crimes of organized crime. The Criminal Division's Money Laundering Asset Recovery Section's Kleptocracy Asset Recovery Initiative is specifically designed to target and recover the proceeds of foreign official corruption that have been laundered into or through the United States. It has proven to be an incredible tool, valuable fight against corruption. The results of this initiative have been outstanding. In 2016, the Department filed the largest single action ever brought under the Kleptocracy Initiative, involving multiple bond offerings through 1MDB, raised money to benefit the people of Malaysia, but was allegedly stolen by corrupt officials and their associates. Just this year, additional complaints were filed in that case, bringing the total amount that we have worked to recover to well over $1.7 billion. I want to stress that these kleptocracy cases, that one of our goals, and the main goal, is to return the assets to those harmed by the criminal conduct. Just last year, for example, the Department returned $1.5 million to Taiwan that constituted the proceeds of the sale of a forfeited Manhattan condominium and a Virginia residence that the United States alleged were purchased with bribe money paid to the family of Taiwanese former President Chen Shui-bian. These are but a few examples of how the Department continues to work with our international partners. As I think we can agree, corruption is an evil need that needs to be rooted out. It undermines the rule of law, threatens the national security of countries, puts honest companies at a competitive disadvantage, and breaks down the social structures of our civilized societies. As I conclude my remarks for today, I want to say just a few things. It is no coincidence at all, that Rodrigo and I are here together today, or that he's in town this week. It is not strange that my good friend Raul Cervantes, the Attorney General of Mexico, was at the Department of Justice yesterday, or that the Ecuadorians were in meetings with our fraud section this week or last week in D.C., or that the Panamanians were here a few weeks ago, sent by my good friend, Procuradora Kenya Porcel, or that we were in Bogota 3 weeks ago, meeting with the Colombian Attorney General. We are all talking about corruption, illicit finance, white-collar crime. We're not just talking, but we're acting. Something big is happening in the world. You can feel it. It's happening every day. You can feel the momentum. The public, everyday people, are tired of having their money stolen by corrupt individuals in the public and private sector. They are tired of not having roads built to move their goods and to get to places that they need to be. They are tired of not having schools. They are tired of not having hospitals or medical care, or to have the infrastructure to secure themselves in their homes or their neighborhoods, because corrupt individuals have stolen their money out of greed and power for themselves. Money that was meant to improve society and the lives of everyday people and the most vulnerable of those people. Because all of this, people feel like they can't advance. They have had enough. People are demanding action. They are no longer silent. We at the Department of Justice will continue, like we have for a long time, pushing forward against corruption where it is, and we welcome our fellow counterparts in the world who are fighting this important fight against corruption. We are committed to working with our partners like Brazil, shoulder to shoulder, steadfast to see what may come. Together we will ensure that there is no place for corrupt individuals to hide, and no place for them to hide their money, assets, or any kind of wealth. No refuge or rest for the wicked. This is the plan. This is the strategy. This is our goal. I hope all of you here today will join us in this noble endeavor. Thank you.